The first thing I heard was my own scream echoing off marble walls. Someone was dragging me from the kitchen, my shoes slipping against the polished floor, my arm burning where fingers dug into my skin. I did not understand what was happening, only that every eye in the Ocean View Hotel restaurant was on me. Then, I heard his voice. Calm, deep, dangerous, in a quiet way. She's mine. Those two words cut through the chaos like a blade, and in that moment, my life split into before and after. Just an hour earlier, I had been invisible. I was standing at my station in the kitchen, chopping vegetables with the kind of focus that comes from years of surviving by keeping your head down. My knife moved in a steady rhythm, the sound grounding me while the kitchen buzzed around me. Orders were shouted. Pans clanged. Steam clouded the air. Newport's richest guests waited beyond the swinging doors, unaware of the quiet war being fought behind them. I had learned early that food was my safest language. My grandmother used to say that when words failed, food spoke the truth. I believed her. Every dish I made carried pieces of her kitchen, the small coastal town where I grew up, the nights when money was tight, but dinner was still warm. Chef Philippe stalked the kitchen like he owned not just the space, but the people in it. His white coat stayed spotless, while the rest of us wore our exhaustion like stains. Whenever his eyes landed on me, I felt it. Dislike mixed with something sharper. I had earned my position with skill, not favors, and he hated that. The Ocean View Hotel restaurant was not just a place to eat. It was where deals were made quietly, where powerful people pretended they were just enjoying dinner. Crystal chandeliers glowed above linen-covered tables. Money and influence filled the air thicker than the scent of butter and wine. At 8:17 p.m., a server slid a note onto my station. Private dining room, table 7, special request. I unfolded the paper. It read, something that tastes like home. No instructions, no allergies, no ingredients, just that. Chef Philippe scoffed when he saw it and shoved the task onto me. He leaned close enough that his cologne drowned out the smell of garlic and stock. "Make whatever you want," he whispered. "When it fails, maybe you'll learn your place." I closed my eyes for a moment and breathed. I reached for ingredients that felt right, not impressive. Fresh Atlantic scallops. Herbs from the rooftop garden. My secret spice blend, kept in a small tin I carried everywhere like a promise to myself. The soup came together the way it always did when I stopped thinking and started feeling. Cream swirled into broth. Steam rose. The color deepened into warm amber. I hummed without realizing it, my grandmother's old tune slipping out as my hands worked. When it was done, the bisque smelled like the ocean and comfort, and something almost sad. The server's eyes widened when he lifted the bowl. "This smells incredible," he said softly before hurrying away. 20 minutes later, the kitchen went quiet. Not normal quiet. Heavy quiet. I looked up and saw him standing in the doorway. Tall, broad shoulders under a tailored suit. He did not need to raise his voice to command attention. His blue eyes scanned the room until they found me, and when they did, my chest tightened. "Who made the soup?" he asked. Chef Philippe stepped forward quickly, smiling like this was his moment. "I oversee all dishes in my kitchen." The man raised one hand, barely moving, and Philippe stopped mid-sentence. "I didn't ask who oversees," he said calmly. "I asked who created the soup, the one that tastes like memories I never had." Before I could speak, Philippe grabbed my arm. "This nobody experimented without permission," he snapped, yanking me toward the dining room. "Come explain your peasant food to our guest." Pain shot through my arm as he dragged me past the stunned diners. My coat pulled loose, my face burned with humiliation. I wanted to disappear. Then the man from table 7 stood. He walked toward us unhurried. He took a spoon, dipped it into the soup still on the table, and tasted it again. He closed his eyes for a brief second. "She's mine," he said. Philippe's grip vanished instantly as the man removed his hand like it was nothing. I stood frozen, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure everyone could hear it. That was how I met Nikolai Volkov. The manager rushed in. Guests were offered champagne. Whispers filled the room. I barely understood what was happening as I was guided away, up to the rooftop terrace overlooking the Atlantic. The night air was cold. Stars reflected on dark water. Nikolai kept his distance, giving me space even after what he had said. "You're afraid," he said, not unkindly. "That's understandable. I only wanted to meet the person who made that soup." I swallowed hard. "I don't understand any of this." He studied me like a puzzle. "Do you always cook like that when you're sad?" My breath caught. "How could you know that?" "Because my mother cooked the same way," he replied. Like every meal might be her last chance to speak. Something inside me cracked open. "Food remembers," I said quietly. He nodded. I told him I would be blacklisted after tonight, that I would lose everything. "Chef Philippe no longer works here," he said simply. I asked him what he wanted from me. "At first, nothing but thanks," he said. "Now I'm curious why someone with your talent lives in fear." Then he offered me a choice, a real one. And as the waves crashed below us, I realized my life had already changed the moment he tasted my soup. I just didn't know how dangerous that change would be yet. I did not sleep that night. The hotel suite was too quiet, too large, too far from the small apartment I was used to. The bed felt unfamiliar beneath me, the sheets crisp and expensive, like they belonged to someone else's life. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Chef Philippe's face twisted with rage, then Nikolai's calm blue eyes cutting through the chaos. "She's mine." The words replayed again and again, heavy with meaning I still did not understand. Morning came softly, pale light sliding through the curtains. I sat up slowly, half expecting someone to knock and tell me the night before had been a mistake. But instead, there was a folded note on the table by the window. "Come to the main kitchen when you are ready. Create something honest, Anne." That was all. When I walked into the kitchen, the room fell silent. Every head turned toward me. The same people who barely noticed me yesterday now watched with open curiosity. I could feel it on my skin. Whispers followed my steps. The line cooks stared. The sous chefs stood straighter. The executive chef, a woman I had only spoken to once before, approached me. "Ms. Novak," she said, her tone careful. "We've been instructed to give you full access to the kitchen today." I nodded, tying my apron with hands steadier than I felt. The kitchen was still my safe place. No matter how strange everything else became, I understood this room. I asked for a market run. A security guard accompanied me, silent and watchful, as I walked through the morning seafood stalls near the harbor. The fishermen greeted me with tired smiles. I chose scallops still wet with salt water, herbs from a small stand run by an older woman who tied each bundle with care. Ingredients with stories, ingredients that mattered. Back in the kitchen, I worked slowly, intentionally. I crushed spices by hand, let the stock simmer instead of rushing it. The kitchen staff stopped pretending not to watch. I could feel their attention shift from suspicion to respect as they saw how I moved, how I listened to the food. When Nikolai entered, the room seemed to change temperature. He was dressed more simply today, dark sweater instead of a suit, but the authority was still there. He stood quietly, watching as I finished the soup. "You didn't have to recreate it," he said. "I didn't," I replied. "This is different. Same feeling, new voice." He tasted it. For a moment, he said nothing. Then, "You understand evolution. Most people only repeat." Before I could respond, the executive chef spoke. "We've never seen anyone cook like that here." I wiped my hands on my apron. "My grandmother taught me that food absorbs what you feel. Fear ruins flavor." Nikolai's eyes stayed on me. "Then you've been cooking afraid for too long." The words landed heavier than he probably intended. Later that afternoon, he asked me to sit with him on the rooftop again. The ocean stretched endlessly behind him, gray and powerful. "I have restaurants across the East Coast," he said. "Places where creativity is protected, where talent is not punished." I folded my hands together. "And what would I owe you?" "Your work," he said, "and your honesty." I told him I didn't trust easily. "I would worry if you did," he replied. He offered temporary housing. Time to think. No pressure. That night, I agreed to tour his restaurants. The next day felt unreal. Providence, Boston, Portland, different kitchens, different concepts, same culture, no shouting, no fear, no broken people hiding behind discipline. Chefs spoke openly. Line cooks ate the same food as management. Mistakes were corrected, not punished. At one restaurant, the executive chef pulled me aside. "He saved my career," she said quietly. "Not by owning me, by believing I deserved better." By the time we drove back to Newport, my chest felt tight with something close to hope. That evening, Nikolai waited for me with a simple dinner on the terrace. Bread, seafood, wine. I asked him why he did this. "Why food? My mother fed us when nothing else was stable," he said. "I built what I wish she had worked in." The answer stayed with me. The next morning, contracts were laid out in front of me. Options I never imagined having. Sous chef position, education, even funding for my own place one day. "What do you expect in return?" I asked again. "Loyalty," he said. "Not obedience, loyalty." I chose Providence, Oceaniano. When I told him, he nodded once, like he had known all along. The weeks that followed passed in a blur. Moving, learning, proving myself again, but this time without fear breathing down my neck. The kitchen felt alive, healthy. I felt myself growing instead of shrinking. Every Wednesday, a table overlooking the harbor was reserved. Sometimes Nikolai joined me. Sometimes he didn't. When he did, we talked about food, about loss, about survival. One night, he gave me a worn cookbook, his mother's. "I don't share this," he said. I held it like something sacred. Winter settled in. Snow dusted the streets. The harbor turned steel blue. I felt rooted for the first time in years. Then, one Wednesday, he didn't come. Security changed quietly. Doors locked differently. Staff schedules shifted. Chef Wong warned me to stay alert. An unknown caller asked for an interview. Too eager, too curious. I declined and reported it. That night, Nikolai came to my apartment. There was snow on his coat, seriousness in his eyes I had never seen before. "There's something you need to know," he said. I felt the shift instantly. A shadow from his past had resurfaced, and suddenly I understood. The man who tasted my soup and claimed me was not just a powerful restaurateur. He was someone with enemies. And now, by choice, I was standing too close to him to pretend otherwise. After Nikolai left my apartment that night, I sat alone at the small kitchen table until the tea in my cup went cold. I replayed his words slowly, carefully, the way I tasted new recipes. A former partner, a man who believed pressure revealed weakness, someone who preferred to strike through people instead of facing Nikolai directly, through me. For the first time since my grandmother died, fear crept back into my chest in a familiar way. Not panic, not hysteria. Just a steady awareness that something fragile now had weight. Work became my anchor. At Oceaniano, the kitchen moved like a living thing. I focused on prep lists, staff meetings, service flow. When I stood at the stove, the rest of the world faded. Food never lied. It demanded honesty, attention, patience. It rewarded care. Security was everywhere now, but quiet. Faces I did not know appeared near loading docks. Deliveries were checked twice. No one mentioned why, but everyone felt it. One afternoon, during Chef Wong's absence, a call came in asking for me by name. The voice was smooth, polished, too rehearsed. He praised my rapid rise, asked about Nikolai casually, like it was curiosity, not strategy. My stomach tightened. I declined politely and ended the call. Then I dialed the number Nikolai had given me. "You did exactly right," Roland said after listening. "That man works for Victor Resnick." Hearing the name out loud made it real. That night I barely slept. Days passed with uneasy calm. Then Chef Wong returned and pulled me aside. "There's a private dinner next weekend," she said. "Important. Nikolai requested you design the full menu." My heart skipped. "Just food?" Her look told me everything. Nothing is ever just food with him. I worked nonstop. The menu was not about showing off. It was about truth. Where I came from, what shaped me, who I had become. Each course carried a chapter. My grandmother's soup, elevated but unchanged in spirit. Techniques learned under pressure. Ingredients chosen for meaning, not price. 3 hours before service, plans changed. The dinner was moved back to Newport, the Ocean View Hotel, where it all began. We arrived under heavy security. The kitchen was ready, spotless, waiting like it remembered me. Roland told me to present each course personally, to stay in the dining room. I understood then. I was not just feeding guests. I was part of the message. When I stepped into the private dining room with the first dish, I saw him immediately. Victor Resnick. He sat across from Nikolai, still and watchful. His eyes slid to me, sharp and assessing, like he was measuring something that belonged to someone else. I kept my voice steady as I introduced the first course. This dish is about foundations, I said. Simple food made to survive difficult times. Victor tasted it without expression. Between courses, conversation flowed in half-sentences and careful words. Business without details. Power without noise. Victor spoke to me once. "You've advanced quickly," he said. "Talent discovered by chance." Nikolai answered before I could. "Talent is rarely chance," he said. "It's usually ignored." The tension sat thick in the room. The final course was my boldest choice, a sweet reinterpretation of the soup that started everything. Familiar flavors rearranged. "This represents possibility," I said, "choosing where you belong." Victor understood. I saw it in the way his jaw tightened, in the way his eyes flicked from me to Nikolai, recalculating. When dinner ended, Victor left with polite smiles and cold promises. After the doors closed behind him, the room finally breathed. Ms. Kasov smiled slightly. Message received. Later, when it was just Nikolai and me, he poured a small glass of cognac. "You handled yourself well," he said. "I was honest," I replied. "That is more dangerous than fear," he said quietly. He offered me more responsibility, more power, a deeper place in his world. I hesitated. "I need transparency," I said. "No more surprises." He met my eyes, agreed. That night, standing again on the rooftop terrace, I looked out at the ocean. Months ago, I was a line cook afraid to speak. Now, powerful men used my food to communicate loyalty and strength. Nikolai stood beside me, close but not touching. "You chose this," he said. "Yes," I answered. But deep down, I knew Part 4 would not be about kitchens or contracts. It would be about what happens when two guarded people finally decide whether trust can turn into something more. The ocean was calm that night, but something inside me was not. After the dinner with Victor, everything felt sharper, louder, like the world had shifted slightly out of alignment, and I was still adjusting my balance. I stood on the rooftop terrace long after Nikolai left, letting the cold air clear my head. I had chosen this path. No one forced me. But choice did not erase consequence. The following weeks were quiet in a way that felt intentional. No strange calls, no sudden changes. Security relaxed slowly, like a hand easing from a clenched fist. Victor had backed off. At least for now, work filled my days. At Oceaniano, I stepped fully into my role. Staff trusted me. Chef Wang treated me like an equal, not a threat. For the first time, I was not just surviving in a kitchen. I was shaping one. Every Wednesday, the harbor table waited. Sometimes Nikolai came. Sometimes he sent a note. Always, the space remained. One snowy evening, he arrived later than usual. His coat was dusted white. His expression tired in a way I had never seen before. "You're carrying too much," I said before he even sat down. He looked at me, surprised. Then he exhaled slowly. "Yes," he said, "I am." We ate quietly at first, familiar dishes, comfortable silence. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer. "I am not used to being seen without armor." I set my fork down. "Neither am I." He studied me for a long moment. When I said you were mine that night, I meant protection, respect, choice. I know, I said. But I also knew, he continued, that if I ever wanted more, it would have to be earned, slowly. The words settled between us, heavy and careful. I don't want to own you, he said. I want to stand beside you, if you choose it. I felt my chest tighten, not with fear this time, but with recognition. I have spent my whole life being pulled, I said quietly, by chefs, by circumstances, by survival. I met his eyes. I will only step forward. Never be dragged again. A small smile touched his lips. That is exactly why I admire you. Nothing dramatic happened after that. No sudden declarations. No rushed promises. Instead, something steadier began. We walked along the harbor sometimes after dinner, spoke about food, about childhood, about mistakes neither of us could undo. He never pushed, never assumed. Trust grew the way good stock does, slowly, patiently. Spring arrived quietly. I was offered partnership in a new restaurant concept, one built around mentorship and sustainability. My name on the door, my vision at the center. I said yes. On opening night, I stood in the kitchen surrounded by people who believed in the same values I did. Respect, care, honesty. Nikolai arrived late, standing in the back, watching. When the first dish went out, it was soup. Not the same one, but its descendant. After service, I found him waiting by the kitchen door. You found your voice, he said. I always had it, I replied. I just needed room to use it. He nodded. That night, on the same rooftop where everything began, he reached for my hand for the first time. Not claiming, asking. I laced my fingers through his. Below us, the ocean moved endlessly forward, unconcerned with power or fear or past mistakes. Months later, I would still hear people whisper the story. The line cook dragged from the kitchen, the Mafia boss who tasted soup and said she was his. They never understood the truth. He did not take me, he saw me. And I chose to stay.